Good afternoon, and welcome to the Office of Research Regulatory Affairs Research Matters. I am Scott Myers, the Clinical Research Educator for the Office of Research Regulatory Affairs, and I will be one of the moderators for today's session. I'm going to quickly go over some housekeeping items. If you have any questions for our presenters during today's session, please Q&A. One of the moderators will respond to you during the session, or we will address it at the end of the presentations. This session is being recorded, and you can watch it again right after it's finished by clicking on the Microsoft Teams live link in the email invitation. We'll also send you the slides via email. You can find the links to future meetings, slides, handouts, and past recordings on Aura's Research Matters website under the Training and Resources page. We do provide a certificate of attendance for those who have logged in using a valid email address. If you do not receive one via email, but should have, please send an email to hrpp@utsouthwestern.edu to request a certificate. Lastly, we want to hear from you. We use the information you provide to plan for future topics you would like us to cover during these sessions. You may also let us know how our speakers did and how our office is doing, so please take a few minutes to complete the survey to provide your feedback. You may access the survey using your phone via the QR code or your computer by selecting the link. I will also drop the link for the survey in the Q&A and in just a moment. Okay, here is the agenda for today. First, Erica Sawczyk will present on who does what in Aura, an organizational overview. Then Melissa Torres Altoro, our Research Support Program Manager, and Nicholas Creeder, our Export Control Program Manager, will speak about research security in their presentation titled Safeguarding the Research Enterprise, Understanding the Rapidly Changing Research Security Requirements. Then, if time permits, we will conclude with an open Q&A session. So let's get started. I will turn that over to Erica.
Yes, thank you so much, Scott. Let me get my slides showing. Okay, here we go. All right. Hey, everyone. This is Erica Sawczyk. I am the Department Administrator for the Office of Research Regulatory Affairs. And today I'm going to present on who does what in Aura and organizational overview. And I'm basically going to cover each of the 5 offices that are in Aura and share with you how or the roles that they play with the research community. Okay, so here are the 5 different offices. We have the administrative office, then we have regulatory support and monitoring office. We have the IRB/Human Research Protection Program. We have the research security office and the conflict of interest and export control offices. Now, I know this is going to be one of the busier slides. This is a visual of our organizational chart, and I'm going to break it down for you on the next few slides. So we'll start from left to right and then go up to where leadership is. Okay, so this is the administrative team, and we're compiled of some administrative staff. We have a financial analyst, clinical research educator, business analyst, department data analyst, and a regulatory monitoring analyst. And these are how some of the roles that we play with the research community. So the administrative team, we typically plan and host the events such as this and also open office hours. We are there to field calls and triage some questions to the appropriate teams. We distribute communications through listservs as well. And we also set up and train users for DocuSign Part 11 compliant accounts. Our financial analyst does manage the billing processes for study startups, modifications, continuing reviews, SIRB submissions, and translation services. Our regulatory monitoring analysts, department data analysts, and business analysts, they all kind of work on special projects like Ethos implementation. They maintain websites and create SharePoint sites. They also develop reports and support processes that improve the teams. And we also provide training and educational resources for ORA staff in the research community, and that's obviously performed by the clinical research educator. Okay, so here we have the Regulatory Support and Monitoring Office, and they're kind of broken down into two different teams. And so I'll start with the Regulatory Support team. And so under the regulatory support team, we have clinicaltrials.gov support. And so they are there to assist investigators with trial registration on clinicaltrials.gov. They're also there to help maintain accurate and updated trial records. And they're always there to help researchers meet the federal requirements to avoid penalties and increase study visibility and credibility. And then we have the sponsor investigator support team, which is under the regulatory support as well, and they provide regulatory guidance for investigator-initiated clinical trials. And they're over there to assist with FDA submissions like INDs, IDEs, regulatory documentation, and ongoing compliance. They're there to help reduce regulatory risk and support study quality, and to enable investigators to focus on science while maintaining legal and safety obligations. Then the second team under Regulatory Support and Monitoring Office is the Quality Assurance and Monitoring team. And so you know them as going out, conducting routine monitoring, auditing, and training to support the research activities. They're there to promote compliance, data integrity, and participant safety. They provide proactive oversight to identify and resolve issues early. They're there to make sure that the studies are adhering to institutional policies and regulatory requirements, and they're always there to foster a culture of continuous improvement and ethical research practices. Now we have the Institutional Review Board, or HRPP, as you know. So let's talk about the Institutional Review Board. So this is a board. We have 4 in our office, and so their role in the research community is they're reviewing research protocols involving human participants to ensure ethical conduct. They are the ones who are approving, requesting modifications, or disapproving studies based on a risk-benefit analysis. They also evaluate informed consent processes for clarity, appropriateness, and documentation. They're monitoring or monitors ongoing studies to ensure continued compliance and protect patient safety. And they're making sure that research aligns with the federal regulations, institutional policies, and established ethical standards. And then we have the Human Research Protection Program. So here, this is where they're providing institutional oversight of the human research program beyond the IRB review. They're developing and implementing policies, procedures, and training for human subject research. They're educating and supporting researchers on regulatory and ethical responsibilities. They also collaborate with compliance offices such as the Conflict of Interest Office, Export Control, and others as well, to ensure comprehensive oversight. They promote responsible research practices and continuous quality improvement, and they're there to ensure research is conducted with integrity, transparency, and accountability. And now we have our Research Security Office. So the Research Security Office is there to implement federal and state requirements related to research security. They are collaborating with the Research Security Officer, and there is a committee, the Research Security Steering Committee, to build a comprehensive research security program at UT Southwestern. And this program is going to cover cybersecurity, foreign travel security, research security training, export control training. The Research Security Office also conducts research security reviews, monitors foreign collaborations, assesses risks, and develops mitigation plans. they're going to be creating training materials and guidance for faculty and staff, and they're drafting policies and procedures to enhance the program's effectiveness and compliance. Next, we have the conflict of interest and export control offices. So they're broken down in the two different offices, and we're going to first talk about export control. So in export control, they're reviewing exports that UT Southwestern personnel want to send to foreign parties. And this includes recipients located overseas or foreign nationals within the US. Some types of exports that are reviewed could be physical items like lab equipment or biological samples. It could also be technology or data. They also do some reviews, and the requirements do vary. So some exports require minimal review and oversight, while some others have sensitive items and may require some special agreements and licenses, and that's where we'll work closely with sourcing and contracting. And then we have conflict of interest office. So they review the outside activities and financial interests of UT Southwestern personnel. And if an affiliated individual is listed on a UT Southwestern research project, we will be reviewing those as well. So an example of an outside activity includes consulting for a biotech company. We're serving on a scientific advisory board. And examples of financial interests include stocks, royalties from intellectual property, and payments received for outside activities. Conflict of Interest Office also evaluates whether the activities or interest represents a conflict with an employee's work responsibility or the employee's research. And if there is a possible conflict, they will be coordinating with the Human Research Protection Program. Okay, so now we are making our way up. This is the leadership, and so all 5 of these different offices are report up to Rhonda Aleppo. She is our Associate Vice President for Research Regulatory Affairs. She is also the Research Security Officer, the COI official, and the Export Controls Officer. And what Rhonda and in that role will typically do is she'll collaborate with the Office of Clinical Research and Privacy Officer. And we do work in partnership with the Office of Institutional Compliance and the Vice Provost and Dean of Basic Research. So in a nutshell, that is a high-level overview of all 5 different offices and what make up ORA. I have some resources here provided to you. It's a list of all of the different emails with a little description of when to reach out to them. So you'll be receiving this information, and thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over now to Nick and Melissa.
Good morning, everyone. I want to make sure that everyone can see the slides. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we see them. Yep.
Okay, awesome, perfect. Thank you, Erica. My name is Melissa, and I'm the project manager for the Office of Research Security within ORA. And today, I'm going to speak to you about some new federal and state requirements regarding research security to safeguard the research enterprise. On the call, we also have my colleague, Nick Creedern, who's the program manager for export control, who will be speaking to you about some export control considerations and updates. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, so many of us might be asking, what is research security? So I'm going to start with providing an introduction to research security. Then I'm going to dive into some of the main regulations regarding research security. I'm going to talk about the research security program requirement. I'm going to give you an update on how is UT Southwestern preparing for the research security requirements. And then I'm going to share some resources and updates on ongoing projects that we have to help the research community comply with these requirements. Lastly, I will turn it over to Nick for additional expert control considerations. Okay, so several years ago, in 2018, 2019, federal agencies, including the Department of Energy, the National Institutes of Health, and the National Science Foundation, increased their focus on issues related to foreign influence and research security. The government was increasingly concerned about foreign governments exerting influence over research in sensitive areas, including in artificial intelligence and biotechnology. They noticed a few things at the time. They noticed inappropriate sharing of grant applications during peer review process. In addition, they noticed that some researchers were found to have undisclosed affiliations with foreign government and incomplete disclosures of foreign relationships. So many researchers fail to fully disclose their ties to foreign governments, universities, or entities when applying for federal funding. These undisclosed relationships could potentially compromise the integrity of research, creating conflicts of interest, putting some risks to IP, to intellectual property theft, and potential violations of federal laws around foreign influence. These create risk not just damage the research ecosystem, but also have implications on national security. Another issue that they noticed was that researchers were found to be conducting the same or similar research at multiple institutions, receiving funding both from federal agencies here in the US and foreign governments or entities. These unreported collaborations raise concern that critical technologies could be compromised. In response to these issues, the Office of Science and Technology Policy made research security a top priority for federal funding agencies that support international collaborations. And issued several actions, and some actions were taken to address concerns about foreign influence. So research security is an emerging concept, and it defines the collective system of controls, including practices, policies, actions, that safeguard the research enterprise against threats to national and economic security, foreign interference, and intellectual property theft. Research security is important because it protects the value, integrity, growth of the scientific discovery and innovation. If research is stolen, manipulated, and misused, it can pose a direct risk to our national security, IP, and technological advancement. Research security can take many forms, ranging from cyber attacks to insider threats to foreign influence. Here I'm providing some example of research security risk. This includes undisclosed foreign relationship, undisclosed foreign travel, foreign influence and interference through funding or partnerships that could result in biased research, espionage via research collaborations and unauthorized access to IP, which can then be used for strategic advantage, not complying with export control laws, cyber attack and data breaches. This includes failure to secure sensitive data, and the participation in malign foreign talent recruitment programs. The Office of Science and Technology Policy has been instrumental in developing policies and mandates to protect U.S. research enterprise from foreign influence and to ensure that federal research is conducted transparently and securely. One of the major initiatives that came out of the Office of Science and Technology Policy is the National Security Presidential Memorandum 33, issued in 2021. NSPM 33 requires action to strengthen protections of U.S. government research against foreign government interference and exploitation. It specifically focuses on requiring research institutions to disclose foreign affiliations, funding sources, and collaborations, particularly those with foreign countries of concerns, including China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. It also requires federal research funding agencies to standardize disclosure requirements for federal funded awards. I want to point out that the mandate emphasized the importance of maintaining an active, productive international collaborative research environment, while creating awareness on research security threats. This mandate also requires establishment of research security program at institutions receiving 50 million of a year in federal research funding. In 2022, the Office of Science and Technology Policy released a guidance document for the implementation of the research security requirement, with the goal of providing clear and effective measurements for ensuring compliance and researchers' responsibilities. This document includes 5 key areas that research agencies should apply across the implementation of the efforts. Another important document that I have here on the right-hand side is the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022. This act aims at strengthening America's leadership in semiconductor manufacturing, scientific research, and technology innovation. The act also includes explicit provisions to strengthen research security across federal funded agencies, including the requirement of the implementation of the research security training. As I said, the NSPM 33 document guidance include detailed information on 5 key areas that the agencies should apply across the implementation efforts. These areas include disclosure requirements and standardization. This is to ensure transparency of foreign and domestic relationship funding and activities. They encourage the use of DPIs, digital persistent identifiers such as ORCID ID, to reduce administrative burden and improve accuracy. They also required codified consequences for violation of disclosure requirements. This is the oversight and enforcement. Violation of disclosure requirements may lead to criminal, civil, and/or administrative consequences, including loss of funding and large fines. We also notice another area for information sharing. We have to make sure that we have a plan in place for sharing information with agencies about violations of disclosure requirements. And last but not least, the implementation of research security programs. As I said, as a part of its ongoing commitment to safeguarding the integrity and research security of the U.S. research enterprise, in July of 2024, the Office of Science and Technology Policy released guidelines for the implementation of a research security program at research institutions receiving more than $50 million per year in federal research funding, and this includes UT Southwestern. The research security program includes 4 mandatory elements. One is the research security training. We need to implement research security training at UT Southwestern and certified that cover individuals have completed the training. We need to provide expert control training to cover individuals working with control technology. We need to implement foreign travel security training to cover individuals, and we need to implement a cybersecurity program. We're working with the information security on this part. So how is UT Southwestern preparing for the implementation of the research security requirement? So UT Southwestern appointed Rhonda Olipo as the research security officer. The research security officer, with support from the research security office, has established a research security steering committee that will facilitate the implementation of the federal and state requirement related to research security, and together will help mitigate institutional risk. To ensure a comprehensive approach, the group includes members from the Office of Legal Affairs, our office, Research Regulatory Affairs, including COI, Expert Control Research Security, HRPP, Institutional Compliance, Information Security, Sponsor Programs, Information Resources, and Research Integrity. We've also created a research security webpage on my UT Southwestern that you can access to the research through the research tab on my UT Southwestern. And we have also developed a dedicated email address, researchsecurity@utsouthwestern.edu. For any questions or concerns, you can always reach us out at that email address. As I mentioned, the CHIPS and Science Act requires cover individuals listed on federal research applications to complete research security training. The National Science Foundation will require this training. It's anticipated that we'll start requiring this training in October of 2025. At least that's what we heard right now. And ultimately, all federal funders will soon require annual research security training. It is anticipated that the training will be required prior to proposal submission. So I want to ask everybody to stay tuned, because in the coming months, we'll be providing more guidance about the implementation of research security training at UT Southwestern. We have created the training, and it's available through Taleo Learn. To access the training, you can navigate to Taleo and log in using UT Southwestern credentials. We have 3 training modules there, including information about what is research security, the importance of international collaboration, and how to manage and mitigate risk. Okay, so another provision on the Seed, Chips, and Science Act is that there's a prohibition for federal funding agencies from issuing awards to individuals who participate in a malign foreign talent recruitment program. I want to spend some time on this because we are conducting some research security reviews, and we're seeing some of these. Sometimes activities and relationship with foreign entities may constitute participation in a foreign government talent recruitment program. Foreign government talent recruitment programs are organized efforts by foreign governments to recruit science and technology professionals or students in diverse fields. Many of these programs provide incentives in the form of grants and fellowships to encourage individuals to relocate physically to the foreign country as a means of attracting talent for the benefit of the foreign government's economic or military growth. Some programs fall into the category of malign foreign talent recruitment program. While not all international collaborations are problematic, malign foreign talent recruitment programs have raised national security concerns due to their lack of transparency and hidden agendas. On the right-hand side of the monitor, I have a tip sheet that provides guidance in identifying foreign talent recruitment programs that may pose a threat to research security and integrity of the U.S. research and development enterprise. These programs have certain characteristics. They're associated with foreign countries of concerns, and they may require individuals to engage in unauthorized transfer of IP, to recruit trainees or researchers to enroll in the program, to establish a laboratory in a foreign country in violation of terms and conditions of a federal award, to being unable to terminate the agreement, to engage in work that could result in overlap or duplication, may require to obtain research funding from the foreign government entities, and may ask you not to disclose program participation and compromise personal compensation. This tip sheet is posted to our webpage, so if you want a reference to it, feel free to do that. It's on the under the research tab of my UT Southwestern. Foreign travel security is also overseen by research security. I want to briefly mention a Texas executive order recently issued by the Governor Abbott, which places limitations regarding travel to foreign adversarial countries. These countries, as defined by federal law, include China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, and Venezuela. This was announced earlier this year via our campus newsletter, but I want to reinstate that travel to foreign adversarial countries for professional purposes is not allowed at this time. While personal travel is not restricted, employees planning personal travel to one of these countries must notify their supervisor and the International Travel Oversight Committee in advance via email. Upon return from the personal travel, employees must also provide certain information about the trip, including whether they were approached by a representative of a foreign adversarial country or offer any gifts, travels, or anything of value. In addition, this executive order states that UT Southwestern, in accordance to this order, UT Southwestern must not accept any gift regarding the value from entities associated with countries of concern. Lastly, I want to mention that our office is also working with multiple business units to improve our international travel approval process and loaner laptop program, with the goal of mitigating the risk of disclosure of sensitive information and provide investigators with secure devices while traveling to high-risk destinations. While we do this, we're working on a UT Southwestern Traveler's Handbook to provide information on what is at risk, the do's and don'ts to protect research data and networks and devices, information about the loaner laptop program inventory and technical support, and resources to navigate challenges while traveling. I want to emphasize that our goal is to maintain an active, proactive, and international collaborative research environment while creating awareness on research security threats. Our research security program will be critical in identifying vulnerable areas to mitigate institutional risk while maintaining our institutional eligibility for federal research funding. I want to emphasize the importance of knowing your collaborators. So know your collaborators, disclose all foreign domestic sources of current and pending support to federal research sponsors, disclose all your personal outside activities and financial interest in your statement of financial interest. And when in doubt, please reach out. Additional updates about the implementation of the research security program will be available through our dedicated research security webpage. So please be in the lookout for information coming in the next few months. And I'm going to turn it over to Nick for some export control considerations now.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. So everybody, my name is Nick Creeder. I'm the program manager with the Export Control Office, and I'll go over some considerations with the current export control program. So just to start off, a little bit of introduction into what export controls are. There are a set of U.S. laws and regulations that restrict the release of commodities or goods, technologies and services. And this can occur both in the U.S. or outside of the U.S. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. These regulations are primarily derived from the federal agencies that I have listed on the slides. So the Department of State gives us guidance around military technologies through the International Traffic in Arms regulations. The Department of Treasury for economic sanctions. When their sanctions or embargoes placed in certain locations, the Treasury Department's a good resource for giving us the rules of the road around that. And the Department of Commerce for all other commodity technology and software controls. And this includes dual use commodities. So the Department of State's going to have everything that's got a purely military application. Under the Department of Commerce, dual use commodities are those both having a potentially having a civilian application, but potentially also having a military application. So for instance, certain categories of drones, any unmanned vehicles, things of that nature that might be commercially available may also have some dual use qualities to them. And then other sponsoring agencies such as the DoD, DOE, or as relevant as required, they may provide some additional restrictions around the type of technology that we might be working with. And then as Melissa just discussed, Texas has added some additional controls through executive orders, and so we are working through those with everybody as a group. Melissa, if you would, next slide. And then in this world, there are two types of exports. There's the traditional physical shipment of goods that we pack up and that leave the U.S. But then there's also what's referred to as deemed exports. And those deemed exports can be the release of technology or know-how, providing access to source code, maybe providing technical specification documents, things about controlled technologies or goods. Those would fall into that deemed export category. And that can occur through interactions that we have with foreign nationals on U.S. soil, or as we're traveling abroad. So when we're giving presentations at conferences in international locations, there's a slim chance that we could meet the deemed export criteria threshold. Though, depending on the good, technology, or service, the threshold for meeting a deemed export or a release, the equivalent of an export, is pretty high. So it's important to work with us prior to any of your international travel to review any of the items that might be reviewed or shared. Next slide. And then I'll go ahead and jump into some of the types of reviews that we perform here at UT Southwestern. One of the biggest ones that we spend quite a bit of time on is the Export Control Questionnaire, which is useful for processing visa applications. And so when UT Southwestern accepts an individual's application for visa sponsorship, one of the most important aspects of that for our office is completion of the Export Control Questionnaire, or the ECQ. The ECQ should be completed by someone who's knowledgeable about the candidate and their proposed responsibilities, any access to controlled information or projects that they may have, so understanding the types of projects that they'll participate in, what their key takeaways may be, and is able to communicate with them to clarify any connections or affiliations with home country institutions, or to clarify any funding support that the visa applicant may be receiving. We do ask for, really it's 2 to 4 weeks for processing of an ECQ, just depending on the nature of the work and what information is available to us. That's kind of our average processing time. And we often find we have to reach out for more information. So ECQs that don't have, really very complete or very descriptive information may result in delays. And it's the most common source. What we typically see is very sparse or slim work responsibility descriptions. And so, if it's easier just to lift from the, the aims of the project, or from the sponsor support letters that's being provided as part of the application process, all of that information would be something you could provide to us. So we don't have to, completely retype what their responsibilities might be. So in the event an export control questionnaire is required, the International Affairs Office will actually be driving that, and they will work with the hiring department to initiate that. And so they'll provide the link to complete the questionnaire, and that questionnaire is completed in REDCap. Our office works closely with International Affairs. They have access to view the questionnaire and where we're at in the review process. And so basically they're able to see if it's complete or in review status. And so we work very closely with them. So when our review is complete, they're automatically notified. And from those notifications, we often will tell the sponsoring department they may have some additional considerations to keep in mind once the applicant joins. That may include, and I'll discuss this later, but maybe there are some export control concerns that we would want to mitigate those risks by implementation of a technology control plan, or we may have the sponsorship that they're receiving may need to be referred to sponsored programs for inclusion, determine whether it should be included as other support, or maybe even to COI for inclusion on their statement of financial interest. So we try to provide a little bit of that guidance when we do the clearance. If we could go to the next slide. International shipping is another large area for our office. So one thing to keep in mind is that all business-related shipments must be made in eShip Global, and this is actually included in UTSW policy FSS 205. So when shipments are bound for a non-US destination and entered in eShip Global, they're automatically assessed within eShip Global. We have an integration with our system, and so we're notified when a shipment is occurring to a non-US location where maybe the Department of Treasury has implemented some sanctions, or if one of the recipients has been identified as potentially restricted from receiving certain goods and technologies, that might trigger our office to do an enhanced review. When an item is flagged for that enhanced review, our office will work to either clear it or reach out to the department within that first 1 to 2 business days. And generally in that 1 to 2 business days, we're either getting clarification so that we can move the shipment to clearance, or we are identifying that the item is export controlled and a license may be required. And I'll talk about licenses in a little bit. And so we may identify that, and so we would reach out within that first 1 to 2 days to say, hi, we believe we have an item that might be controlled, and these might be the measures that would need to be put in place, and we would work with the requester to facilitate that so that we can get the shipment out the door with the appropriate documentation. To avoid any unnecessary delays, the eShip Global submission should be as specific as possible, detailing, shipper, sender, receiver information, the description of the items. And when we say description, a complete description. Often we see a lot of very generic descriptions that might say lab supplies or promotional items. We need to know specifically what is being boxed up in those items. And then a lot of delays are caused because the eShip Global requires an HS or Schedule B code, and that has to do with tariffs. But there is a tool within eShip Global that should assist, and so you should be providing the HS or Schedule B code in the eShip Global submission. If that is missing, incomplete, or is inaccurate, our office will usually be flagged, and we'll try to work with your office to get an accurate one in there. We also need to get a good understanding of the exact destination, including the country, the value of the items being shipped, and depending on what is being shipped, we may reach out to get an end use or end user assurance statement, because the item may in that dual use category where maybe there's a civilian and a military application, that end use assurance statement gives us confidence that the item is going to be used for the civilian side of it and not in the other. And then lastly, often we'll attempt to provide an export control classification number. If you do not know the export control classification number, and it's likely that you won't because they're very difficult to obtain, we ask that folks do not provide those unless we have given it to you to enter. And so if you're unsure what the export classification number is because we haven't previously provided one, just reach out to our office. I've got our contact information on the last slide, but it's really easy. export@utsouthwestern.edu. Reach out to us and we can work with you to get the ECC in. Next slide, please. International travel. Melissa talked a little bit about that. I'll just go over a really high level with that. So again, all international travel, whether it is UTSW funded or host paid, so regardless of whether you are seeking reimbursement, it must be submitted in the PeopleSoft TA auth module and undergo an export risk assessment. All submissions submitted in PeopleSoft will automatically go through that and will be flagged for our office, similar to the way shipments are flagged. If there's travel to a destination or city, country that has some sanctions or embargoes in effect, we'll also need details about the nature of the travel, such as presenting at a conference, or maybe you're going to have a collaborator meeting or both. Maybe you're going out to do some global health initiatives. Just describe it as best you can. We'll reach out with additional questions if needed. Understand that we don't always know the lodging at time of the TA entry, so please do put anticipated or best known information at that time. We'll always reach out if there's any questions. The name of the sponsor, so whoever's hosting, if that is a component of the travel. And then lastly, any details about UTSW devices, equipment, any materials that may be accompanying the traveler, because we want to make sure that we are appropriately providing documentation so that you can get in and out of customs without any delays, because I understand most folks will want to get home and not answer a lot of questions. And so working with us ahead of time, we can make sure you have all of the appropriate documentation so that those customs officials could potentially interact with us as opposed to you with any of those questions. A couple of other considerations with international travel. All international travel as part of an outside activity must be disclosed on the traveler's COI statement of financial interests. We do like to see that having been done before looking at the TA, but if not, we'll refer you out to the COI office. And then additionally, all international travel may be reviewed by the International Travel Oversight Committee. And they're looking at items from a safety and business continuity perspective. They do look at the Texas EOs, the Department of State travel advisories, and do the insurance enrollments. Alexander Daniels is a great point of contact for that and can answer a number of questions. They also have a webpage that provides additional details, and we do confer with that group routinely. And so really good group to work with. Next slide, please. Okay, so export licenses. So in the event we have an item that requires a federal authorization, our office would facilitate that. So export licenses are just that authorization. They're provided by the federal government. They permit an end user to carry out a specific export transaction. There are two primary types. There are general licenses that are made available to us by the federal government, and there's a number of those, but they're very specific in what they permit, and our office reviews those regularly, and we leverage those often for the activities that we pursue. And then there's issued licenses, and those are licenses for which a general license doesn't have sufficient scope to cover that activity. And so in those cases, our office would reach out to the federal agency with jurisdiction to say, we'd like to export this item or share this item with a foreign national under these considerations and these conditions. Can we be permitted with a license to do so? Federal government will have a bit of back and forth with us and then ultimately either deny the activity or approve it with a conditional license. And if a license is provided, and we have a few on campus for some various shipments and other activities that we do, we will sit down with the affected group and go over what that means, because there's record keeping requirements with issued licenses. There's technology control plans that we'll issue, and that's actually on the next slide, so we can go ahead and advance to that. So technology control plans often are a companion to a license. So they're the formal document that is issued by UTSW. Our office issues these, and we use them to outline or to formalize our adherence to export control requirements. They're implemented when we have identified an international activity, such as a collaboration, a shipment, or travel involves a party, item, or transaction that's subject to export regulations or licensing requirements. We may issue a TCP where a license isn't required, or maybe we're leveraging a general license to just make sure everybody understands the rules of the road. The biggest thing to keep in mind is TCPs are non-punitive. We don't write these because we found somebody has done something wrong. Rather, we write these so that we ensure that we are all operating above board and are aware of the considerations and restrictions for the activities. They are developed collaboratively with the affected working group so that we can make sure that we're addressing the specific situation. And the TCP recipients are invited to, the draft meeting where we, propose what the conditions would be, allow an opportunity to ask questions and to make suggestions prior to signing, because we want to make sure that the TCPs, are kind of a living document that follow that activity or transaction and that are well understood by all the groups. Our office will reach out shortly after issuing a TCP, just to usually in that 30 to 60 day window, to see if there's been any new questions or considerations that maybe we didn't account for, so we can make any edits. And then we go kind of on a as needed or annual basis, depending on the nature of the license or controlled environment. We may reach out more or less frequently. And again, a TCP would be issued every time a federal license is required, but a TCP may also be implemented when a license is not used, so that we can abide by those rules. Next slide, please. And again, just a couple of key takeaways. All international activities and transactions must go in an export control assessment. And if that activity or transaction is subject to export controls, our office will facilitate all license requests with the federal government. And regardless of whether a license is ultimately needed, or if we just need to issue some technology control plans, we will do that as appropriate. A reminder that TCPs are non-punitive. They're used to just formalize our understanding of the export regulations. At UT Southwestern, the export controls are described in policy ETH 401. And as Melissa said, when in doubt, reach out. So we've placed our simple email address on here, which is just export@utsouthwestern.edu. And I look forward to your questions.
Okay, everyone. Thank you, Erica, Melissa, and Nick. That concludes the presentations, and we do have a little bit of time left for our open sessions, so I invite you to submit any questions or comments that you may have at this time. I'm going to pause for just a few seconds to allow you time to type up any questions. While we're waiting for you to get them typed up, I just want to remind you of the survey. If you can just spend a few minutes to complete the questions, we will use the information to improve the content of these sessions and our presentation of them. We will also be able to see what areas we need to work on in our office and what areas we are excelling in. I do see one question here. Let me publish it. I think it's about export controls. Oh yes, does export control handle visiting researcher requests?
Certainly. So I'd say to initiate one of those, just reach out to our office at export@utsouthwestern.edu. And one of our team members will work with the requester to get the relevant questions that we have that would be needed for a review, such as maybe, what is their institutional affiliation? We might need their first and last name, and a brief description of the activities or materials that they will have access to while visiting, the things we might share with them. And then we can put together whether any of that would require a license or a TCP. In most cases, it doesn't require either because the screening that we perform usually comes back cleared. But certainly we can definitely do that. So just reach out at export@UT Southwestern and we can work with you on those.
Thank you, Nick. I'll give you all just a few more seconds. If anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in there. Doesn't look like we have any more questions for today. So I want to again thank all of our presenters and thank you all for attending today's session. So our next Research Matters session is scheduled for June 17th. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Thank you all.